Welcome back to the GCN Racing News Show. Coming up this week, how Filippo Ganna's incredible individual pursuit world record was broken twice. The latest twist in the Tom Pidcock and Ineos Grenadiers saga, the second division squad that signed one of the most renowned coaches in the world, as well as a 10-year bike partnership, the final road races of the season, and some very sad news from Sir Chris Hoy. This week in the world of racing, we learnt that Rigoberto Urán now wants to become a professional footballer. The Colombian finished racing after crashing out of La Vuelta with a broken hip, but told El Colombiano that he likes to try new things, and he actually sounds pretty serious about it as well. We also learned this week that Tom Pidcock is now unlikely to leave Ineos Grenadiers, at least for the time being. What looked almost a certainty just a few days ago is now off the cards, according to Dan Benton, who's always got his finger on the pulse. Apparently, negotiations between the team and his agent broke down in the latter part of last week. It's hard to see how that relationship is going to work now, though, isn't it? I mean, how awkward is the first team get-together and training camp going to be? It's really going to need some very strong leadership to sit everybody down, explain what happened, and how they're now going to move forward. And finally, we learnt that Filippo Ganna's 4-kilometre individual pursuit world record has been broken not just once, but twice at the UCI World Track Championships in Denmark last week. Now, you would be forgiven for never having heard of the rider who did it first. 21-year-old Josh Charlton is not exactly the most high-profile of riders, but that looks set to change given what we saw on the track last week. In the qualifying event, he posted a 3-minute 59.304, taking 0.332 seconds off Ganna's record on a track that's not noted for being particularly fast. I'm going to try and give some extra context to that ride with some stats. His average speed from a standing start was 60.2 kilometres per hour or 37.4 miles per hour. His opening kilometre, which he covered in 1 minute and 5 seconds, means that he covered the final 3 kilometres in 2 minutes 54. An average, once he was up to speed then, of almost 62 kilometres per hour or over 38 miles per hour. Just bonkers figures. Some of you watching this will remember watching Chris Boardman win Olympic gold in this event all the way back in 1992 in Barcelona on that sort of space-age looking Lotus. Well, according to Michael Hutchinson, Charlton would have caught Chris twice. Who is Josh Charlton? Well, he's 21, he combines track with time trials and road racing, and won the Under-23 National Time Trial Champs last year. He also finished 6th in the World Under-23 Champs in Glasgow later that season, so he's clearly got a big engine. An engine he himself once described as diesel, but looking at his speeds around the track last week, I think there's something a bit more high-octane going on there. Anyway, Charlton of course made it to the final of the individual pursuit, where the world record was broken again. Not by Charlton on that occasion though, but by the man who started on the other side of the track, Italy's Jonathan Milan. A big Italian started out at warp speed, putting over a second into Charlton over the first kilometre, and his advantage did come down slightly between there and the finish, but Milan didn't fade. He took his first ever gold medal at the event after 2 silvers and a bronze in the last 3 years. His time as he crossed the line? 3 minutes, 59 seconds, 0.153, taking 1500ths of a second off Charlton's time set earlier that same day. And what a year it's been for Milan, eh? 11 wins on the road, a bronze at the Olympics, and now a rainbow jersey at the World Champs with a world record to boot. Enjoy your off-season, Jonathan. You certainly earned it. Shout out too to Dan Bigham. He took bronze in the event, which marked his last at that level. He will now concentrate on his job as aerodynamicist as the Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe team. But he finished his racing career with multiple national titles, an Olympic silver medal, multiple medals at the World Championships, and a world hour record as well. Considering where he came from, that is quite incredible. And incidentally, he was one of the contributors to Connor's video that came out on Saturday about whether or not we can believe the speeds that we're currently seeing in the world of professional cycling. If you haven't already caught that video, you can do so over on the main GCN channel, and I would thoroughly recommend you do. I'll quickly wrap up the rest of the track world with some standout performances from the week. And what a week it was for Julie Leth. 9 months ago, she gave birth to her first child. A couple of weeks ago, she announced that the Worlds would be her final professional event. And my word, what a way to bow out. Taking not just one, but 2 rainbow jerseys in front of her home crowd. Leth joined up with Amelie Diderichsen to win the women's marathon, and less than 24 hours later, she'd won the points race ahead of no less than Lotte Kopecky. Now, believe it or not, those were her first ever World Championship wins in a career that spanned more than a decade. What a way to bow out, as I said. Congratulations to Julie. Kopecky was unable to come away with a gold medal on this occasion, and she also finished second to Ali Wollaston in the elimination race. Wollaston also took gold in the Omnium. Both the Keirin events were won by Japanese riders. In the men's, that meant it was for the first time since 1987, and in the women's, for the first time ever. So well done to Kazushige Kuboki and Mina Sato. Great Britain won the women's team pursuit, but had to settle for second in the men's behind Denmark. The British women did particularly well, actually, also taking gold in the team sprint, in the individual sprint with Emma Finucane, as well as the individual pursuit with Anna Morris. The Dutch dominated the men's sprint events, as they so often do. Harry Lavreysen won his 14th, 15th and 16th world titles in his career at elite level in the sprint, team sprint and 1 kilometre individual time trial. What a monster athlete he is. There was a very emotional ride from Sebastian Mora of Spain. He won the points race by a single point, taking the second rainbow jersey of his career a full 8 years after the first. And there was also a first ever world elite title for Lorena Wiebes. She won the women's scratch race. Now, unfortunately, there was a bit of a cloud hanging over the event on the final day due to the immensely sad news of Sir Chris Hoy. He'd spoken with the Times newspaper and revealed that his cancer diagnosis is terminal. Doctors have given him between 2 and 4 years to live. It left the cycling world and many far beyond cycling in complete shock. Chris is, and always will be, an absolute legend, not just of the sport, but of the world. One of the most kind-hearted, professional, down-to-earth, gentle giants the world has ever seen. My heart goes out to him and to his family. I know that he will make the most of every single drop of life that he has left on this earth, because he is an absolute warrior. He has been and will continue to be an inspiration to so many people. God bless you, Chris. I'm going to move on now to the final road races of 2024. Tour of Huangxi and the Tour of Chongming in China, the Japan Cup in Japan, and a pair of Italian one-day races in the Veneto region which rounded things off for the year. Tom Schoinge and Nilsson Paulus came away with the honours in Japan. The Latvian won the criterium race in the week, and then Paulus came away with the win in the main race yesterday. In Huangxi, Lennart van Eetveld capped off an incredible breakthrough year with the overall win and a win on the Queen's stage, which is basically the same thing he'd done in the UAE Tour all the way back in February. He finishes the season with 5 wins to his name and a boatload of UCI points. Something made all the more remarkable, given that he had a knee injury near the start of the season and was then knocked off by a car whilst out training when he'd just about recovered from that injury. The rest of the stages in Huangxi all finished in bunch sprints. Tamino, Vangalua and Govakar came away with 1 win each, but it was Ethan Vernon who was the most successful of the week, taking back-to-back wins on stages 3 and 4. And IPT were pretty successful in Italy as well. Corbin Strong won the Giro del Veneto last Wednesday, which means that the team won 29 races this season. That's more than all but the top 5 World Tour teams. At the Veneto Classic yesterday, Magnus Cort took the 5th win of his season and the 26th for Uno X. Again, it's been a brilliant season for them, but they're not resting on their laurels. It was announced last week that they'd signed one of the most renowned coaches in the world, Olaf Alexander Boo, who's risen to prominence in recent years by coaching Christian Blumenfeld and Gustav Iden to performances that many thought were impossible in the triathlon world. It's going to be very interesting to see how much of an effect that he has on the team's performance in the short and long term at Uno X. And speaking of long term, the team also announced a 10-year partnership with Ridley Bikes. Not something I've ever heard of before, so again, it'll be interesting to see how well that partnership plays out in the short and the long term. Back to the racing then, and there was a 1-2-3 for Sirotti on stage 2 of the Tour of Chongming. Lack, De Zutter and Schweinberger combined to make a lead out and sprint that nobody could get past before they got to the finish line. Lack would go on to win the final stage and the overall classification too. In the Women's Tour of Huangxi, Sandra Alonso added to the team's success, taking the third win of her 2024 season. The team, incidentally, was not on the list of Women's World Tour applicants, which was released last week by the UCI, and nor were Astana in the men's. However, both have stressed that it's just a small paperwork issue and all will be sorted in the next days or weeks. In other news, Lotte Kopecky has become the first female rider ever to win the Nationale Trophée voor Sportverdienste, which is the Belgian national trophy for sporting merit. The likes of Bonen, Merckx, Gilbert and Museo have all won it in the past, but it's an award that you can only ever win once in your career. Small corrections corner now. It was Barbara Guarischi, not Rachele Barbieri, who won stage 4 of the Simac Ladies Tour last week, so my apologies for that mistake, one of many that I've made this year and over the last 12 years. Incidentally, if you've missed any of the racing over the last week, you can catch almost all of it on Discovery Plus or Max, where you can watch a full season of bike racing, including cyclocross, which is just getting into full swing. Now, the big news at the first Super Prestige round yesterday was that Fem van Empel did not win. She finished 3 seconds behind Celine del Carmen Alvarado, with Lucinda Brandt in third. Van Empel competed in 21 cyclocross races last winter and was only beaten twice. So maybe she won't be quite as dominant this year, or maybe she's just lulling us and her rivals into a false sense of security. We shall see. What wasn't a surprise was that it was an all-Dutch podium in the women's race and an all-Belgian in the men's. There, Joran Visura took the biggest win of his career, crossing the line 2 seconds in front of Niels van der Putter, with Michael van Turenhout in third. Ellie Isabit wasn't at the race and won't be at the next couple either. He was handed a 3-race suspension by the UCI after stamping on Ryan Camp's bike last week in a race. I think we can all agree that was a suitable punishment, but to be fair to Isabit, he was quick to apologise both on Belgian television and also on his own social channels last week. He knows he was wrong, he said sorry, he'll serve his ban and he will be back soon. Now, just before I get on to transfer news, a couple of bits on riders who've just completed their final season as pro bike riders. Lilian Kalmajan took to Instagram last week to say that he'd be retiring at the end of this season, and together with Gorka Izagirre and Rudiger Selig, they all rode their final race yesterday in Huangxi. Kalmajan ends his career with 12 wins, including a stage of the Tour and a stage of the Vuelta. Izagirre had 9 wins, including a stage of the Giro, and Selig had 3 wins over her 13-year career. Selig is someone I'll always remember as a man who was always there to help others whenever he could. There have been multiple examples of his selflessness that were caught on camera, and I can only imagine he's just like that the rest of the time too when not on camera. So congratulations to all 3 on their respective careers. On to the transfer news now then, and I'll start with Dan McClay. The Brit has been with Arkea since 2020, but he's just signed a 1-year deal with Visma Lease Bike. And we can safely assume he'll be there as a lead-out rider for Olaf Koy, which was supposed to be the job of Mike Turnison next year. However, somewhere along the line in recent months, things broke down between the two parties, and the Dutchman has now signed to ride for Astana for the next 2 years. Milan Feder is leaving Visma Lease Bike and heading to Q36.5, while Sarah Roy is going to EF Oatley Cannondale from Cofidis. Alex Manley moves from Jayco to AG Insurance, and it's there that Ashley Momapashi will be for another couple of seasons. So she signed a further extension to her contract with that team. You might well remember that she was due to retire at the end of last season, I think it was, but I'd imagine that with women's cycling going from strength to strength right now, she didn't want to miss out on opportunities and also earnings, which is fair enough. It's fantastic to see her still in the pro peloton for the next couple of years. And just finally, EF Education Easy Post have signed Max Walker from the Astana development team. Walker is from Douglas on the Isle of Man and took medals at both the road race and time trial in this year's British National Championships. Right, that is all for this week. I'll be back again in 2 weeks' time as I'm off on holiday next week, but we will have a racing news show for you again on Monday, so make sure you check that out. But I'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Bye for now.